yourself in that reality, it's going to be a challenge. And you're right though, with that maturity, that ability to imagine yourself in a different place, to decompress. I mean, being able to read before one goes to sleep. There's actually been some cool studies on this. It shows that it winds down the brain. It allows the brain to actually go into a place that prepares one for a deeper level of rest so that they can function a bit stronger in the morning.
Right. Which I totally
and that
agree.
Sense of motivation. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was saying I agree. Now go ahead, man. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're fine, man. You're fine. And being able to kind of to take yourself into that place where you can be able to even just wind your brain down, to step away from the different stimuli that come and I think focus a lot of our energy on these are the things that keep us up, and to be able to take yourself out of the mindset of things that keep you up. And for young people, I mean, they got all sorts of issues that come from, even if it's just the simple anxiety of having a test that come up the next day, or an issue with a family member or a friend, thinking about those relationships. There are peak levels of activity and anxiety that happen that we rest ourselves on when we put ourselves into an isolated state. And reading alone, trying to get young people to read to remove those anxious thoughts, is so paramount.
I agree, man. Agreed. I remember. I go back to 6th grade, man. I was walking home from Willow Hill, and we had this thing called the National Book Fair. Scholastic Book Fair. It came like once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I would rack up. I got my sports books. I would get my adventure books, and I would get my history books. And my mom was a teacher, for the listeners, and so she kind of already had inside intel on on like some of the stuff that was going to be sold at the bookstore. So I never forget, man. I'm walking down the street. I'm passing your old house. Your old Nolan. What street was that? Yeah.
Windsor.
There we go. So yeah, I'm on your street. I'm walking up. I'm about to go into like the wooded path, that goes up to my block. And this little girl, she looks back and she's like, look at you reading. Look at you reading. Look at him reading. And I'm like, man, you making fun of me because I'm reading, And, I think back, man, and it's like, I don't know where she's at right now, but I'm pretty sure it's not where I'm at. And I like where I'm at. And,
You know what's really funny? I know that story. And not because I know your story, but because that is, being reading was not a thing that was cool.
Right.
Right? You couldn't be in elementary school at Willow Hill in the early 90s and be cool for having books.
Right.
And that story, that just hits me because I remember back in 4th grade, 5th grade, when a little pudgier version of myself wasn't very athletic, and I dreaded going out to recess because I'd get picked on or whatever else. And I remember, I can still see it in my head. Remember Willow Hill? There was that hill behind the 4th, 5th, 6th grade playground that kind of took you up to the trees.
Oh yeah.
There was this one little nook over there that I would beeline with whatever I was reading at the time. And yeah, those Scholastic Book Fairs are huge. I would beeline up to that hill. And I was just talking about this past week with one of my coworkers, and I would just sit there and read for the entire duration of recess.
Hey man, listen, I posted this on Twitter, and I said, put a book in your child's hand, quote unquote, take a look around. Nerds run the world. Period. Because fast forward, not to brag, you're not a boastful person, man, but I'll brag for you, man. Like, you're killing it right now. You're on your A game, and you're just getting stronger. And I feel like I'm doing the same. And a lot of that is because you had reps, reps and reps and reps of reading and enrichment. And like you said, going into that place where you can see your 4th grade self, maybe in another 10 years, 5 years, It's this 25-year-old nerd guy who's running Google. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is the reality.
It's a muscle like any other muscle, right? You wanna flex your biceps. You're gonna pull reps. You wanna get faster. You're gonna continue to run. You're gonna be out there sprinting every day. Your brain is a muscle. It's a tool that needs to be exercised, and reading is the best exercise for that brain that I know of.
No doubt, bro. No doubt. So we're gonna move along here. This is some favorite part of this particular topic we're talking about. So I want you to name one of your favorite books and kind of give us an overview, the lasting effect it had on you, and why you would recommend it to somebody.
Okay.
So we can do two since we have a little more time. You know,
all right, I got a lot. This is arsenal. But so I touched a little bit already on Hope in the Unseen, and it's kind of crazy. So there's this character, Cedric Jennings, and he's a public school student living in a pretty rough part of DC, and experiences violence and experiences all sorts of struggle while he is just, he's gifted. He likes to read, he's talented, but he's socially kind of out of place because the world that he's in does not promote the idea of higher education or education in general. And I read this book. First time I read this book, I was about 23 years old. I had just finished college. I was working for the Boys and Girls Club, and I felt myself surrounded every day with other versions of Cedric. These smart kids whose idea of masculinity, specifically their idea of black masculinity, did not revolve itself around education. And so there's this constant struggle that they were faced, similar to what Cedric faced, in trying to be someone who found intrinsic joy in things that were challenging and intelligent, but whose social cues did not point them in that direction. And when I moved into my role in admissions the following year, specifically focusing on underrepresented groups and outreach to first-generation communities, I saw in many parts of this country young, black, Hispanic, Latino men and women who didn't connect with the idea that intelligence was valuable for their own survival. And why this really connected with me is similar to why Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me, connected with my own experiences, that these stories, these words are so closely connected to a world that my parents very much fought to keep me out of. Because, I was but one half generation, one half step, about 14 miles removed from being in an environment so much like that Cedric came from, that Ta-Nehisi came from. And I think about books that were just impactful to how I think today. And those are the two. But where I really saw myself enjoying reading and seeing some fun in just the stories and the imagination that came out. So I'm going to give you three. See, look at that.
All right.
Is,
up in the ante.
It's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. That Douglas Adams series.
Guardians of the Galaxy?
Where... No. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide to... Okay.
Yeah, you might remember, like, in 2005 or something like that, they made a movie, and Mos Def was one of the characters in there. And,
yeah, okay.
But you gotta check it out.
I remember that.
Remember this?
Yeah. I gotta revisit that, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And there's this dude, Arthur, who winds up getting picked up and put on a spaceship and is traveling around the galaxy, going to these really sort of off-key, off-beat places, while at the same time worried about if where he comes from, his little town, was going to be destroyed by these aliens. And there are these cool parallels between like demolishing a town in order to make room for a highway, right? Like that was the idea in the story, that the aliens were gonna demolish the Earth in order to make room for an intergalactic bypass. Right? Some of these things that kind of happen, I think, in a larger scale, the more marginalized communities, but not even on that level. It was just a fun read.
Dope. I got to revisit that.
And I think picking up that was definitely the spot. What about you, man? I'm curious.
Yeah. So all right. So you gave us 3. All right. So I'll start off my number 1. I'll start with. I'll go with A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
And it's a real little book, man. It's probably about like 300 pages. It's gotten a ton of awards. It's been out since probably the late 60s. So the overview on the book is Viktor Frankl was once he was a Jew, who basically was trapped in concentration camps, and eventually got his way out of that and became he was a published author, but I believe he became a psychologist. So this guy like totally revamped his life. But the story of the book, man, is just like, even in dire states, it's a blessing to even be alive. He talks about in the book how he saw, people that were held captive like him, and they had died already. Like, I mean, they were completely at that time healthy, totally healthy, but inside they're done. They're gone. Their soul was gone the moment they got captured. And he talked about how he just maintained his mental state, and it made me just think about like, wow, man, the universe is so big. It's tons of matter, tons of things going on, and us as human beings, we tend to just focus in on ourselves and just kind of go crazy, and we forget that it's such a bigger thing out here, and it's a blessing to struggle. The struggle will remind you of your strength, and he actually was able, the whole term mind over matter. I mean, in my assumption, that's like the ultimate use of mind over matter, because that brother, was able to get over that, and I guess that I don't know if he escaped, or I mean, his run had just ended, and he was just one of the slaves that was able to just basically live a prominent life, but it's a great small piece on just self-preservation, man, and just maintaining your spirituality and sense of being. And I would recommend that to anybody. It's a tiny book, and it's an easy, quick read. It's pretty dark, it's a dark book, but it's light at the end of the tunnel, man. The second book I'll shoot out. I got some favorites, man. The Alchemist is one of my favorites. I'm sure you read that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny. That is like an increasingly popular book. Too.
Yeah.
I'm more and more. I talk to people like, oh, The Alchemist. Like that's the book that I hear a number of people connecting with now.
Every year, it's like every year the stock rises on that book. But I say that to say this. I'm not going to put that book in there. But I'm gonna go with what I just last read, just to kind of shake it up a little bit. And this is gonna be probably a surprise pick for people, but I'm actually go with Jay-Z's book Decoded.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you read that, but I'm not big on like the get rich quick books. Hey, I'm Jay-Z. This is how I got rich. Read my plan. Or the Donald Trump. This is how I made my. I don't care about that stuff. I think business acumen is pretty much white and black to me. You know what I mean? But the book Decoded more so focuses on Jay-Z's. It decodes his lyrics, his rhymes, and he actually explains word for word, what he was meaning in these contexts of rhymes and tracks, and he actually takes you back to what he was doing at that time. And for artists like Jay-Z, who rarely